What happens when one of music's most beloved rising stars walks into what should have been a career-defining moment, only to discover the host has other plans? In just 37 seconds, a single dismissive comment would expose Kelly Clarkson's true colors and turn what was meant to be a celebration into a public humiliation that no one saw coming. The lights were blazing hot in Studio 6B that Tuesday afternoon. Teddy Swims had been looking forward to this moment for months. His latest single had just hit #1, and appearing on The Kelly Clarkson Show was supposed to be his victory lap. He adjusted his vintage leather jacket one last time as the production assistant gave him the thumbs up. "And we're back in 3, 2, 1, the floor director whispered. Kelly's smile was picture perfect as she turned to face her guest. But something felt different today. There was a coldness behind her eyes that the cameras couldn't quite capture. "So Teddy, congratulations on the #1 hit," Kelly began, her voice carrying just enough enthusiasm to sound genuine to the audience. "I have to ask though, don't you think it's a little ironic that someone who looks like you is singing soul music?" The studio fell silent. Teddy blinked, certain he had misheard. "I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?" Kelly leaned back in her chair, a slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Oh, come on, you know what I mean. The whole soulful thing. It's just interesting, that's all." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the warm, supportive Kelly they were used to seeing. Teddy felt his chest tighten, but he kept his composure. "Kelly, I've been singing my whole life. Music doesn't see color, and neither should anyone else," Teddy replied, his voice steady despite the shock of what was happening. Right, Kelly waved her hand dismissively. "But let's be honest here. Your label probably told you to lean into that whole aesthetic, didn't they? The tattoos, the beard, the whole working-class hero thing. It's very calculated." The cameras kept rolling, but you could feel the tension radiating through the studio. Crew members exchanged worried glances. This was not going according to script. Teddy took a deep breath. He had dealt with skeptics before, but never on live television. Never from someone he had respected. "Kelly, with all due respect, you don't know me. You don't know my story or where I come from. I didn't choose this path because a label told me to. I chose it because it's who I am." "Oh, please," Kelly scoffed, her mask slipping completely now. "Spare me the sob story. We've all heard it before. Rough childhood, found music, now you're authentic. It's the same playbook every record label uses." The audience was dead quiet now. You could hear the hum of the studio lights, the soft whir of the cameras. Teddy felt something shift inside him. He had come here to share his joy, his success, his music. Instead, he was being torn down by someone who should have been lifting him up. "You know what, Kelly? You're right about one thing. I did have a rough childhood. I grew up poor. I worked construction jobs to pay for studio time. I played in dive bars for years before anyone knew my name. But I never let any of that make me bitter. I never let it make me tear down other people who are just trying to follow their dreams." Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "How noble of you. But let's talk about what everyone's really thinking. Do you actually write your own songs? Or is that part of the image too?" The question hit like a slap. Teddy had written every single song on his album. He had poured his heart and soul into each lyric, each melody. To have that questioned, on national television no less, was almost too much to bear. "Every song on my album came from my heart, from my experiences. I wrote them in my apartment at 3 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. I wrote them on napkins during my lunch breaks. I wrote them because I had something to say, not because someone told me what to say." Kelly nodded, clearly not convinced. "And I suppose all those co-writing credits are just for show? Collaboration is part of music, Kelly. Even you work with other writers. That doesn't make the emotion any less real." Kelly laughed, and it was a cold sound that echoed strangely in the bright studio. "Oh, honey, you don't need to explain the music business to me. I've been doing this since you were probably learning your first chord." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable now. Teddy felt his hands clench into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. He thought about all the people who had supported him, who believed in his music. He wouldn't let Kelly's cruelty diminish that. "You're absolutely right, Kelly. You have been in this business longer than me, which makes what you're doing right now even more disappointing." "Excuse me?" Kelly's voice sharpened. "You have a platform. You have influence. You could use that to build people up, to celebrate music and art and creativity. Instead, you're using it to tear someone down for no reason other than you can." The studio was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether they should clap or stay silent. The crew looked like they wanted to disappear into the walls. Kelly's face flushed red. She wasn't used to being called out, especially not on her own show. "I think you're being a little dramatic, don't you? Am I?" Teddy leaned forward slightly. "You've questioned my authenticity, my appearance, my songwriting, and my motivations. All I did was come here to talk about music. If asking you to treat me with basic respect is dramatic, then yes, I guess I am." Kelly's jaw tightened, and for the first time since the interview began, she looked genuinely rattled. She had expected Teddy to shrink back, to apologize, to play along with her game. Instead, he had turned the tables, and now she was the one looking bad in front of her own audience? "Look, I think you're misunderstanding my questions," Kelly said, trying to regain control. "I'm just trying to get to know the real you. Isn't that what interviews are for?" "Getting to know someone doesn't require insulting them," Teddy replied quietly. "There's a difference between curiosity and cruelty, Kelly. I think you know that." The audience began to murmur. A few people in the front row were nodding along with Teddy's words. Kelly noticed this, and her expression hardened even further. "You know what? I think maybe you're not ready for this level of success if you can't handle a few honest questions." Kelly shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Honest questions?" Teddy shook his head in disbelief. "Kelly, you opened this conversation by questioning whether someone who looks like me should be singing soul music. How is that honest? How is that helpful? How is that anything other than mean-spirited?" Kelly stood up abruptly, her chair rolling back behind her. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard. The cameras scrambled to adjust their angles. "I think we need to take a break," Kelly announced, but Teddy wasn't finished. "No, let's not take a break. Let's finish this conversation. You started something here, and I think we should see it through." "Excuse me?" Kelly's voice was ice cold now. "This is my show. I decide when we take breaks." "You're absolutely right. It is your show, which means everything that's happened here today is a reflection of you, not me." The words hung in the air like smoke. The audience was completely silent now, sensing that something monumental was happening. This wasn't just an awkward interview anymore. This was a moment of truth. Kelly walked around her desk, moving closer to where Teddy sat. Her producer was frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, trying to get her attention, but she ignored him completely. "You think you can come on my show and lecture me about how to do my job?" Kelly's voice was barely controlled fury now. "I'm not lecturing you about your job, Kelly. I'm just asking you to remember that there's a human being sitting across from you. Someone with feelings, with a story, with dreams, just like everyone else." "Oh, spare me the philosophy lesson," Kelly snapped. "You know what I think? I think you're playing the victim here because you can't handle real scrutiny." "Scrutiny?" Teddy's voice remained calm, which seemed to make Kelly even angrier. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like bullying." The word bullying hit the studio like lightning. Several audience members gasped audibly. Kelly's face went white, then red, then white again. "How dare you?" she whispered, but her voice carried clearly through the studio microphones. "How dare you come on my show and accuse me of bullying?" "I'm not accusing you of anything, Kelly. I'm just describing what's happening. You've spent the last 10 minutes questioning everything about me except my music. You've made assumptions about my character, my authenticity, my motivations. You've dismissed my responses and mocked my experiences. What would you call that?" Kelly was pacing now, her hands gesturing wildly. The cameras tried to keep up, but she was moving too erratically. "I would call it journalism. I would call it doing my job. I would call it asking the questions that need to be asked." "Whose questions, Kelly? Who told you these questions needed to be asked? Because I guarantee you, my fans didn't ask you to question whether I belong in music. My label didn't ask you to insult my appearance. So whose agenda are you serving here?" The question caught Kelly completely off guard. She stopped pacing and stared at Teddy, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to form words but couldn't quite manage it. "I don't have an agenda," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then why are you trying so hard to tear me down? What did I do to you? What did I do to deserve this?" Teddy's voice cracked just slightly on the last word, and suddenly the human cost of this encounter became crystal clear. Here was a young artist, someone who had worked his entire life to reach this moment, being systematically destroyed by someone who was supposed to be celebrating his success. "You didn't do anything," Kelly said quietly, and for just a moment it seemed like she might apologize, might find her way back to decency, but then her expression hardened again. "But that doesn't mean you deserve success just because you want it." The cruelty of the statement took everyone's breath away. Even the crew members looked shocked. This had gone far beyond uncomfortable television. This had become something ugly and personal. "I never said I deserved anything," Teddy replied, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. I said I earned it. There's a difference. I spent years writing songs, playing shows, working jobs to support my dream. I earned every single fan, every single stream, every single moment of success. You don't get to take that away from me, don't I? Kelly's smile was sharp as a knife. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like one bad interview could change everything for you. Amazing how fragile success can be, isn't it? The threat was unmistakable. Kelly was using her platform, her influence, her power to try to destroy someone whose only crime was achieving something beautiful. The audience was horrified. Several people in the front row were shaking their heads in disgust. Teddy looked at Kelly for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. The hurt was still there, but it was joined by something else now. Disappointment, clarity, resolve. You know what, Kelly? You're right about one thing. Success can be fragile. But you know what's even more fragile? Reputation, respect, legacy. He stood up slowly, and this simple action somehow commanded the attention of everyone in the studio. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet but carried clearly through every corner of the room. I came here today excited to share my music with your audience. I came here thinking I was going to talk to Kelly Clarkson, someone I respected, someone who understood the power of music to heal and inspire. Instead, I found someone who uses her platform to hurt people for no reason at all. Kelly opened her mouth to respond, but Teddy held up his hand gently. Please, let me finish. You asked me earlier if I write my own songs. I do. And you know what inspires most of them? People who lift each other up. People who choose kindness even when it's hard. People who use whatever power they have to make the world a little bit better. He paused, looking directly into the camera. But I've also written songs about people who do the opposite. People who tear others down because they can. People who mistake cruelty for strength. People who forget that behind every dream is a human being who deserves basic respect. The studio was absolutely silent now. Even the crew had stopped moving. Kelly stood frozen, seeming to realize for the first time the magnitude of what she had done. You want to know who I really am, Kelly? I'm someone who still believes in the goodness of people, even after today. I'm someone who thinks music can heal wounds instead of creating them. I'm someone who would rather build a bridge than burn one down. He began unclipping his microphone, his movements deliberate and calm. But most importantly, I'm someone who knows when it's time to walk away. My grandmother taught me that you can't control how other people treat you, but you can control how you respond, and I choose to respond with dignity. Kelly finally found her voice. Teddy, wait. Let's just calm down and finish the interview. Why? Teddy asked simply. So you can hurt me some more? So you can try to make me look bad on national television? I don't think so. He set his microphone on the coffee table between them with a soft clink that seemed to echo through the stunned silence. You know what the saddest part is, Kelly? I know your story. I know you came from humble beginnings. I know you faced rejection and criticism early in your career. I know people doubted you and questioned whether you belonged. And instead of using that experience to protect others from the same pain, you chose to inflict it. Kelly's face crumpled slightly, as if his words had hit something deep and painful inside her. That's not what I was trying to do, she whispered. Then what were you trying to do? Teddy asked gently. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you forgot what it feels like to be on the other side of this table. You forgot what it's like to have someone with power and influence decide your fate in front of millions of people. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every word, every expression, every moment of this extraordinary confrontation. The audience sat transfixed, witnessing something they had never seen before on daytime television. I have to go now, Teddy said, straightening his jacket. But I want to say something to everyone watching at home. If you have a dream, if you have something you want to create or share with the world, don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong. Don't let anyone make you question your worth or your authenticity. You know who you are better than anyone else. He began walking toward the exit, but turned back one more time. And Kelly, I hope someday you remember why you fell in love with music in the first place. I hope you remember what it felt like when someone believed in you. Because that feeling, that support, that encouragement, that's what changes lives. That's what makes dreams come true, not this. With those words, Teddy Swims walked off the Kelly Clarkson show, leaving behind a studio full of shocked faces and uncomfortable silence. Kelly stood alone at her desk, the weight of what had just happened settling over her like a heavy blanket. The cameras kept rolling for another 30 seconds, capturing Kelly's stunned expression, the confused murmurs of the audience, the frantic gestures of the production team. But the real story was already walking down the hallway. Dignity intact, head held high. In those final moments before the emergency commercial break, something profound had happened. A young artist had refused to be diminished by someone with more power. He had chosen grace over anger, truth over convenience, self-respect over career advancement. He had shown an entire audience what it looked like to stand up for yourself without tearing someone else down. The show would go on. The cameras would keep rolling. But everyone in that studio knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen what happens when authenticity meets adversity, when character is tested under pressure, when someone chooses to walk away rather than compromise their values. And in that choice, in that moment of quiet courage, Teddy Swims had proven everything about himself that Kelly Clarkson had questioned. He had shown his authenticity not through his music or his appearance, but through his actions. He had demonstrated his character not with words, but with his unwillingness to participate in his own destruction. As the commercial break began and the studio lights dimmed, one thing was perfectly clear. The real star of the Kelly Clarkson show that day had just walked out the door.